In November 2023, three lawmakers reintroduced a resolution urging the US Senate to ratify the law of the Sea Treaty. This was backed by hundreds of former US government officials and military officers, writing to Senate leaders urging them to ratify UNCLOS to ensure that the US can harvest critical minerals from the seabed. The International Seabed Authority is expected to agree regulations for the exploitation or the mining of critical minerals this year in 2024. But why isn't the US party to UNCLOS? For answers, I spoke with Gregory, Director of the Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative and Senior Fellow at CSIS.
So at the beginning, meaning in 1982, when the treaty was signed, the Reagan administration objected to the revenue sharing scheme that was established as part of the deep seabed mining regime. The deep seabed was declared at the very beginning of negotiations to be the common heritage of mankind. So there was a widespread belief within the negotiating convention that it would be unfair to let the most advanced, most developed states, really just probably 4 or 5 states at that point, who really had the scientific capabilities to allow them to get all of the benefits of deep seabed mining. So the ISA regime was set up with this revenue sharing scheme. A country like the US or Japan, the UK, France, and the Soviet Union, what were called the P5 at the time, they could get a lion's share, but they had to distribute some funds through the ISA to the international community. Reagan called that socialism. So there was a renegotiation throughout the 80s that led in 1994 to what's called the implementing agreement. That was signed by Clinton in 1994, and it resolved the U.S.'s substantive concerns. So the remaining U.S. concerns for the last 20 years have been ideological. They have not been based in fact. The U.S.'s factual objections were all resolved by 1994.
So do you expect that the U.S. might very soon take the steps to ratify UNCLOS?
I think it unlikely, unfortunately. It's possible there is another push on Capitol Hill. The last time there was a real concerted effort was 2012. But again, the problem is that the opposition is not factual. There's nothing you can say that will convince the opponents to ratify the treaty. They simply object to it because it has the word United Nations in it. They have no substantive objections. It's the only issue in which the U.S. national security community, the environmental community, the commercial community, they all agree. Everybody who has a stake in the oceans agrees that UNCLOS is in the U.S. national interest, but a very narrow slice of the Republican Party objects.
So do you think that the businessman or the business acumen in Donald Trump would push him to try to ratify this?
It's possible, but the largest, really the only institutional objections to this point come from the Heritage Foundation. They are on the record. Their official institutional position is to oppose it. They opposed it in 2012 and rallied lobbied Republican lawmakers to oppose it. And Heritage is the one that has led the charge in writing the blueprint for a future foreign policy under a Trump 2.0. So it's possible. Trump is unpredictable. He could go his own way. But clearly those around him who have a voice right now in his decision-making are opposed to ratification.
Is there any way that the U.S. can get in on deep-sea mining without ratifying UNCLOS?
No. I mean, there's a way that the U.S. could explore on its continental shelf, but that only extends to 200 miles. The U.S. could try to explore its extended continental shelf, which can extend up to 350 miles. But it's unlikely that companies would invest in that because no other country on Earth recognizes the U.S. extended continental shelf because we don't have access to the UN bodies that confirm those claims. Same with deep seabed mining. There's an argument that gets made by some of the opponents of UNCLOS here that you don't need approval from the ISA to explore the deep seabed. And they point out that Lockheed Martin still has 2 sites and could explore it. But what Lockheed says over and over, and what every other U.S. company says, is we are not going to sink hundreds of millions or billions of dollars into a project that has no international legal recognition. That would be insane. So the only way a U.S. company would ever get involved is if they partner with a foreign state. They're not going to, and therefore none of that revenue is going to go to the U.S. government.